my seat courtside was closer to the Celtics bench, and more than once you could see that Ime was, and now mind you, Ime is cool as the day is long, but he was not happy with some of the decision making on that end in terms of passes. And I think it was a combination of some poor decision making and the amped up pressure by the Heat, particularly in that third quarter run.
You know what I saw, Monica? Even though Jason Tatum had 29, I said this. We were talking about this the other day where everyone's like, oh, well, who did Miami beat in Atlanta and Philly? And I'm like, well, it was great defensive exchanges, but I feel like Miami had, like, better legs than the legs that I saw Boston have going through KD and Kyrie, going through Giannis. And even, like, those Jason Tatum turnovers, they just seemed like they were careless, tired turnovers. Like, where he just looked like he was a little bit, like, he was tired. He was drained. Did you get that feeling?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Doris on our broadcast remarked about that a couple different times, whether it was sort of him frustrated with the no call and kind of taking his time to get back and putting his team at a deficit because of that, or just kind of fatigued because, listen, it was on him to contend with a Heat squad that was clicking on literally all cylinders last night. And so I think that's a fair assessment. I do think, though, the Horford news really kind of, I don't want to say tailspin, but you find that out 3 hours before a ball game. I think that is a big piece of some of the lack of continuity you saw from the Celtics last night, even just down to the basketball of it, right? Like the Heat are able to dig in and get those two. Gabe Vincent comes up with those two strips of Robert Williams on the baseline because Al Horford's not an element in which you have to account for in terms of his ability to stretch the floor. So it was interesting. It was an intense ball game, I'll tell you that.
So I know Marcus Smart not available, and he had a great series 2 years ago against against Jimmy Butler, really holding him to shooting. But Monica, when I put Jimmy Butler in the same sentence with Michael Jordan as the only players to average 28 points per game, 5 assists per game, 2 steals per game on 50+% shooting from the field in a single postseason, what does that mean to you?
Listen, that is rarefied air. But I think, and I'm just sort of obsessed with this stat, and I'm going to keep saying it through this series, Jimmy shoots 51% when the possession starts off of a defensive rebound. Like, it was literally Revenge of the Body Snatchers, switched roles, whatever movie you want to reference. The teams completely reversed roles from the first and second half. And so you played exactly into what the Heat do well and how they excel at basketball.
Monica McNutt joining us this morning from South Beach. I know you hanging out and having some fun while making sure you're doing work with the Miami Heat and the Boston Celtics. Joining us this morning on Keyshawn, J. Will, and Max. How much did the loss of Smart and Al Horford affect the Celtics, though, last night? Both of those guys.
On a scale of 1 to 10, Key, I put it at like 8, honestly. In particular, Smart, I think, okay, so the Horford news coming late throws your whole game plan, right? But Smart, to Jay's point, there's an edge that he brings. There's a character that the team sort of follows after when he's out on the floor. And not for nothing, there were points where I just kind of looked at Jason and Jalen, and I didn't necessarily love the expression on their faces. Like, that third quarter, they got punched in the mouth as a team, and they did rally a little bit late in the fourth. It was a little bit too late. But I think you saw the clips last night of Smart on the bench, and he was talking to Tony Brothers a ton and kind of encouraging his guys as best he could without being in uniform. And so he is a personality that not only changes the complexion of a game because what he can do on the floor, but his competitive edge, his demeanor, his spirit, all of that stuff.
What's the likelihood we're going to see Smart and Horford for game 2?
I think the Celtics are pretty optimistic about Smart. Listen, worst case scenario on this Horford thing, y'all, like, that could be game 4. Like, he's got a clear protocol. And I don't, like, you know, we're prepping for other shows this morning, and I love Wendy, and he's ears to the street on the ground. As he understands it, the Celtics feel like, you know, there are things that they could do better, and they're not wildly concerned. But to me, if Horford isn't available until game 4, that's a huge deal. Like, and I get it. House money, not house money, but Miami was fresh. They were at home last night. The Celtics have the room to play better. But I think the Horford thing is a big deal in this series if he's not available until game 4.
And, Monica, he spaces the floor. He allows Boston to hit those gaps, you know what I mean, to get to the rim when he's not on the court. If I'm sitting there, if I'm Bam, I'm not worried or respecting Robert Williams or Daniel Tice. Y'all shoot all y'all want.
Not only that, but, like, I thought Bam played really well, even though he didn't put up monster numbers. He had those 2 signature blocks. He was physical, like the whole thing. He's able to spend so much time in the paint because of Horford. But beyond that, like for Jason, the spacing is off there too, right? Like, yeah, he had 29, but it wasn't efficient. The turnovers, I think Al helps with the turnovers because he's a steady guy. Like, he's going to help you make good decisions. And if nothing else, he's going to be your release in terms of avoiding an empty possession. Like, there's a lot with Al Horford, not just the defense. Like, he opens up the floor for everybody else. Like, if he's on the floor, you can't – literally, y'all, like, those 2 strip plays by Gabe Vincent, who I thought played phenomenal last night, like, that doesn't happen if somebody has to account for Al Horford. Like, and Robert Williams played great in the first half, but, again, everybody needs the space that Al creates.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus right now.